Last video, we introduced safety programs.
Fascinating. What's in it?
Yeah, exactly. What's in it? What's in your safety program? Possibly another good question might be, what needs to be in a safety program, especially when some safety programs span hundreds of pages and sort of resemble a set of Encyclopedia Britannica.
What's that?
Hey kids, when I was little, I had to look in books for knowledge. I didn't have the opportunity to Google, so that's what encyclopedia are. Safety programs, for the most part, are very similar from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. They all have a lot of similar components and similar construct. So regardless of geographical boundaries, a lot of them will have the same elements. So why don't you join me as we have a mile-high look at these elements, and of course we'll explain each in depth in subsequent videos. Hi, my name is Kevin Barrett. I'm a health and safety professional, and I make health and safety related videos here on YouTube. This is the second video in a new series, Health and Safety Programs Explained. So what we're going to do in this video is we're going to look at the contents of health and safety programs, and this way you can use it as a checklist or a springboard, or just maybe to validate what you've got already as a program. So the question is asked, what's in a program? As I said, safety programs contain a lot of basic elements. Now, first and foremost, before we get too far, there is no restriction as to what you can put in your program.
Nope, nothing.
But please keep this in mind when you're designing it. If you want to add something that's not doable, it isn't complementary to your organization's function, duties, and tasks, and actually making things safer, it isn't worth doing. In other words, if the thing that you want to add or implement is not going to add value to your program, but just increase the workload, you better consider before adding it. Because chances are, honestly, it'll likely just get ignored and avoided by the workforce, and you'll end up wasting your time and everybody else's. Now, saying all of that, let's get in and talk about contents. Very first thing that we have to talk about is policy. Now, I will have detractors. I can almost guarantee that I'll have detractors out there. A lot of people will say a policy is not part of your health and safety program. I kind of disagree, because you have to have this overarching statement. Here's a definition from the Cambridge Dictionary. A policy is a set of ideas or a plan of what to do in a particular situation that has been agreed upon officially by a group of people, a business, an organization, a government, or a political party. Now, another way to look at that is how the organization is going to carry out an action, in this case, health and safety, and it's covered over in a high-level broad statement. Policy needs to drive and empower your program, so that's why it needs to be part of your program. Now, it differs from a policy statement because a policy statement is a bit more wordy, a bit more granular. You can think of it as a series of less broad statements and how it relates to your policy. More about that in a coming video. Now, the next thing that we need to talk about is roles and responsibilities, basically the participants and the participation, or how they participate. Roles and responsibilities within a program need to be stated. That's obvious. You can't get anywhere without it. You want to avoid confusion, you got to say who's doing what and how much are they doing. Now, these roles and responsibilities can be outlined by position, by group, by hierarchy. In fact, it's not unusual that the same person will occupy a lot of different roles and responsibilities. You also have to state within this section the involvement of different parts or different groups within the organization as far as health and safety goes. For instance, a big addition to your health and safety program is going to be how the health and safety committee or health and safety representative works within the program and works for the program. Now, as I've said before many times, hazard identification, assessment, and control is the mainstay. That's the foundation of any health and safety program. You cannot have a health and safety program that is centered around anything but hazard identification, assessment, and control. Your program needs to have instruction on how hazards are assessed, identified, corrected, and typically this is done through a formal process such as job hazard assessment or job hazard analysis, field level hazard assessments, and possibly work-specific risk assessments. The program needs to include guidance and instruction, and of course, any specific roles and responsibilities that aren't addressed elsewhere within the program. The next thing on the list is worksite inspections or workplace inspections. Now, quick definition for what an inspection is. A workplace inspection is an observation tour of a workplace or a worksite or the selected areas or locations of a workplace. And during this process, you're looking for, you guessed it, hazards or hazardous situations. Now, inspections are part of the hazard assessment process, often kept separate, but they are part of the hazard assessment process as they reveal potential hazards as they're occurring, and they're usually corrected through the inspection review process and logged for review afterwards to make sure that the corrective action is sticking. The program needs to include schedules, participants, corrective processes, etc. Basically, the instruction on how worksite inspections are going to take place. Pretty much the last in the hazard identification and assessment process, often not considered as part of the process, but actually is the incident reporting and investigation process that needs to be contained within your program. Hazard identification does directly relate to incident reporting and incident investigation because incidents are reported because a hazard occurred, incidents are investigated, and as a result, hazardous situations are corrected. Your program needs to include within it how the reporting is done, how the investigation is conducted, and of course, who's conducting the investigation all the way up into reporting and corrective actions. There needs to be other things focused on, such as training for investigators. This leads me to another component, which is training and instruction. Now, I've just talked about some significant things within a program, and that's our hazard assessments, inspections, incident reporting, incident investigation. All of these things require some accumulated knowledge and skills, so hence the need for training. Your safety program needs to outline and identify how training is done and how it's undertaken. So you need to identify who's trained for what, are there special training needs that need to be identified, how the training is confirmed and validated, who does the training, and up to even how you're going to select external providers. Part of workplace training is also the new hire orientation, and it's very important because how you directly deal with people as they're coming into the job site and coming into the workforce. As far as health and safety goes, there's other direct relation is with the emergency response. Now, it's important to understand emergencies happen regardless of what you think.
There's real emergencies every day.
A lot of organizations rested on their hubris before COVID-19 occurred, thinking that they were very safe and they could deal with any emergency, and then COVID-19 hit. So it just goes to show you that emergencies occur and they're going to occur, not if, but when. So your program should start identifying things like, for instance, right down to the basics. First aid. Who's going to be performing first aid? Where's it going to be done? Is there any training required, and other things that might not be addressed elsewhere within your program as far as emergency response, such as what to do in case of fire, what to do in case you need to shelter in place, where are shelter in place areas located, muster stations. You also might want to consider drills and practices as they might be required by local legislation or a municipal bylaw. Programs need to be promoted. It would be awesome. It would be my utopia if everybody went, yeah, I want to be part of the health and safety program. But it isn't always the case. In order to foster an effective safety culture and one that thrives on continuous improvement, a safety program needs to address things like program promotion throughout the organization, including leadership endorsement and communication of the program. The program also needs to address responsibilities with certain groups. For instance, and I want to harp on it again, the Joint Occupational Health and Safety Committee or health and safety representatives, because they play a vital role in program promotion and fostering safety culture. Other activities that promote awareness and acceptance of the program should be indicated within your processes. For instance, in Canada, we have what's called a National Day of Mourning here. That should be addressed within your program and noted. Another thing that you want to consider is workplaces all differ. Every workplace is different, regardless if they're similar. If this is a widget maker and this is a widget maker, guess what?
People say we're different, but we're really not that different.
No matter what, they're two different widget makers, two different companies. They're both going to have differences. So your safety program should include duty and task-specific instructions. Now, these things are called a number of things. Safe operating procedures, standard operating procedures, safe work procedures, safe work guides, all sorts of different names, and often these documents will complement any hazard assessments you're doing. So they're important to have. One important thing to note, though, is don't waste time. There's no reason to include documents that are not specific to the workplace. A good example would be, and I've seen workplaces that do this, they don't have any confined spaces in their workplace, and they don't have any personnel that would enter those confined spaces anyway. So why are the safety programs addressing confined space entry? Better to deal with what you need and what you have to have before you deal with other things that are extraneous and maybe not necessary. Finally, the last part really of any health and safety program is, how do you confirm the program is working? How do you make sure that you're in compliance? How do you make sure that your program is effective? What I'm talking about is program auditing, review, and revision. Nothing remains constant in this world. It doesn't, okay? Companies grow, shift functions change, tactics within the organization change, products that the company is offering change, marketplace demands change. So in other words, the organization is going to change. Change is inevitable.
Things change. Always do.
Your program has to be the same way. It has to change and be agile to change with the organizational needs. The program needs to address how often these reviews are going to take place, how revisions are going to be done, and when these revisions are going to take place. For instance, some people want to wait until the end of the fiscal year before they start with any program revisions for good reason. In addition, if your program isn't undergoing any kind of a certification audit or any other kind of audit, you may want to include an auditing process to verify effectiveness and program awareness in the workplace. So, going to wrap it up. Don't run away. Wrap-ups are always important. There are basic elements common to all health and safety programs. There's no boundaries, but you need to take care and you need to make sure that your health and safety program isn't bulky and there's not parts in it that are not being used and really not worth the time of anybody to write it or to participate in it. These activities and processes need to be examined for exactly what's required. The important thing to note is no program is perfect. It cannot be done, shelved, so that you can revel in its perfection. It needs to be under continuous review. In other words, it needs to mirror a healthy safety culture by universal acceptance, meaning top-down endorsement and bottom-up participation, and continuous improvement. Now, in the next video, I'm going to talk about health and safety policy, policy statements, and how you might craft one for your organization, or edit your current policy, or just validate what you have in place. But the important thing is it begins with a health and safety policy that empowers your program within your organization. Hey, thanks for sticking with me to the end. Do me a favor, if you like the video, give me a like. Just hit that like button. Actually, it's down there, but I'd appreciate a like. If you're new to the channel and you haven't done so already, why don't you click the subscribe button? It's also down there. I'm leaving some links on the side here, and they're for you to learn more about health and safety. Do me a favor, if you like the links, let me know. Okay, give me a comment. Until we see each other again, can you do me a favor? Don't just think about safety, don't just talk about safety, but do safety. Set an example at home, at play, and in the workplace by provoking safety. Because if we're provoking safety, we make the world a safer place. Until we see each other again, take care. Bye for now.